They say that history doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it definitely does rhyme. I'm Hip on Mike. Welcome back to the channel. So today, guys, I'm going to share a video about market sentiment and how it can change and what lessons we can learn from my experience and my time in the hobby when I happened to join during, the COVID boom and what lessons we can take from that and apply it to today's current boom during the Scarlet and Violet era. So, um, welcome back. Like I said, I feel like I've been kind of lagging lately. The last month, I've only done one video a week, and three of them have been openings. So. Um, I feel like I need to step that up. I need to do it more often. I need to do some other videos like this one, for example. This one's been stewing in my mind for a while, and I feel like it's a good time to talk about this, and hopefully you guys can learn something from it. Okay, so right now, market sentiment is pretty wild. We have so many things going on in the hobby. First off, I want to kind of touch on some parallels as to what we see now today, and what we did during a similar time in the Sword and Shield era. So right now, we are awaiting Destined Rivals. I believe it's going to come out in a few weeks, so everyone's excited for that. So I really want to make a comparison real quick. Not a one-to-one comparison because the sets are totally different aside from like the mascot and the timing. So I remember in well, this recent November, right? Certain Sparks came out in October. I remember it was around the time I got married in October, my wedding. Uh, I wasn't looking to put any money into Certain Sparks, but I remember you can get pre-orders pretty cheap. I saw as early on as possible for pre-orders, like around 110, 120, even 130. And then, me thinking at the time, like, it's kind of a little steep because we did see booster boxes below 130, but things started to pick up. And I think once we got closer to November, that's when we really saw, the spike going on in Scarlet and Violet. And what's funny is, you know, Surgeon Sparks is a Pikachu set, right? It has Pikachu as the mascot, and the top chase card, for most, I believe, is the Pikachu EX. And it's a November set, and then we go into the new year, 2025, and then the specialty set is an Eevee set. It has Eevee on the cover, Prismatic Evolutions. Super insane set. So good. Pull rates are absolutely atrocious, though, but we'll get into that for another time. So I want to make kind of like the comparison. So Surgeon Sparks, that's when the boom is obvious, and then it just kind of just goes on a frenzy once Prismatic comes out, right? Similarly, back in late 2020, we are on the heels of some influencers pretty much, showing the world that they're into Pokemon cards, like Logan Paul. I think even Logic at that point showed off like one of his like big purchases and like a couple of his cards, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of hype going on. We're in the midst of the COVID restrictions. Everyone's at home, not doing much aside from looking at their cards and looking at hobbies that they can do indoors. So it's funny because in that November 2020, about a month before I jumped into the hobby, we had Vivid Voltage. What was the chase card? Pikachu, the Rainbow, the Chonkachu, right? So again, I'm not comparing the sets one to one, but I'm comparing the market sentiment. So this is when Vivid Voltage on the heels of like Champion's Path. So Champion's Path uh, was kind of like the catalyst, in my opinion, that because they had two crazy chase cards for Charizards, and then we go into the Pikachu set, and then after that, coincidentally, we had Shining Fates. So again, not nearly as good as Prismatic, but it has the EV set. But the sentiment at the time very similar. Like everyone was losing their minds for it, right? Paying over $100 for pre-orders, and this is before we had Pokemon Center ETBs. So the regular ones were going absolutely nuts. But anyways, guys, just want to touch on that. So another point of the video that I want to talk about is some of the lessons that I learned, and then we're gonna apply it to today's market. And so taking you guys on a trip down memory lane. Again, I am going to segment it on the three blocks of Sword and Shield, and we're only focusing on the main expansions, so the sets with booster boxes, and we'll talk about what it was like during the time when it was released, and how it got to the prices that they are now. So here we have Sword and Shield, the base. This was a pretty lackluster set. You have the Marnie, the full art. In Japanese, it's pretty expensive, that single. And then in English, Marnie's not that expensive. I think it's like $40. And then we have the Rainbow Snorlax, and then maybe a cool Rainbow Lapras. But other than that, nothing much. Like I like Zacian and Zamazenta, but I think we had the gold cards in there and the regular forwards. I pulled the full art Zamazenta. It was actually pretty cool. But so this was pretty expensive out the gate because we had this is it got released in what, February? Let me exit that. Okay. So yeah. Anyways, guys, Sword and Shield, kind of like a lackluster set, but the reason why it's so expensive, I remember it was like very expensive at the time. This was released in, I believe, March. So this was, or February. We'll have to double check. But this was right when the world basically shut down. So that means, production stopped. The print runs of this was going to, run as business as usual, but we had, the world had to shut down, you know. And this is an example of this box being scarce relative to everything else in the era. Doesn't have a ton of good stuff in it, but this is more of a collector's piece. Again, I know a lot of people are confused with why certain booster boxes are so expensive when they don't have really great chase cards. This is because the box itself becomes what's being sought after, right? So the box is the collectible, not the cards in it. In this case, um, yeah, I remember opening these up. This is pretty cool. In the Sobble tin, I believe, or the Grookey, I forgot which one. I opened Cosmic Eclipse and pulled that Reshiram and Zekrom with N alternate art. That was so sick. Anyways, so let's jump to. I thought I put booster boxes. Let me jump Clash. So Rebel Clash is considered the worst set in Sword and Shield. And there was a time where I tried to defend it because I just finished Sword and Shield the game, and I really liked the starters, and I thought Toxtricity was cool. I think we have really cool full art Ninetales, but there's honestly guys like I defend it, but it is the worst set in Sword and Shield. I have to admit. So this was released in May of 2020. Again, this is during the time of the COVID shutdown, so production was waned, and we still see it at 281. So let me see if I can check the price. Yeah, so it was always around MSRP, but at that time it was for that set in particular, it was always expensive because there wasn't anything really like chase worthy, and it just has slowly crept up. This is a prime example of this just being a scarce product. Let's jump into Darkness of Blaze. I don't really have much to say about Rebel Clash. That. Darkness Ablaze. Take a look at the booster box again. So Darkness Ablaze had a little bit of hype. We did have the Charizard VMAX, but that's literally like the most valuable card, and it's not even super hard to pull. It's like a $30 card, I think. It does have a cool full art Houndoom, but yeah, nothing really worth chasing here. We do have, I think, the Sonia and the Boss's Orders of Giovanni. Yeah, so this box is just the product of it being scarce as well. It was printed more than the other two sets previously, but because this came out in August, and because it has the Charizard boost, but doesn't really have much. I If Champions Path didn't exist, I think the Rainbow would have been put in this set, and it would have made this a little bit more of a better set overall. But this might actually be the worst set. I don't know. It's between this and Rebel Clash. Um, yeah. So I remember this was. I almost bought one. I remember I almost bought one for 120, but I'm glad I didn't because it's just not really good. Vivid Voltage. Let's take a look at Vivid Voltage booster box. And right now it's been going up. I remember I tried to buy it like maybe a couple months ago, like in November. I tried to get it for the MSRP, but it had just sold out when I was about to go get it, and now it's at 201. This at the peak, guys, I think early 2021, this box sold for $208. I think the highest sale, if I'm not mistaken. And then it got a reprint like in April, and it just got hammered. It got as low as like 110 or 120, and it stayed dormant for like a while. So it wasn't until let's take a look. When did it start to go up? Yeah, it started going up in May of last year, slowly, 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 and then now so it was MSRP for a while, and then once it sold out in November, we just saw it take off. It's still, rather affordable, but I don't know if I would buy this. I would probably buy it just for the nostalgia. This has a chance to do well over time, but it's going to take a long time to get to probably what one of the goals you want to set. I think a lot of people want to get booster boxes. They want to see it get to 1,000. I think this will take a long time if it ever does. You're better off using that cash towards a better booster box, in my opinion. But for me, this is the set that I came back in. I love Vivid Voltage. I've pulled so many of the good cards. I never pulled the Pika, the Rainbow. So again, market sentiment at the time, guys. This was the it set, and all it took was like a massive reprint to uh, bring it back down to earth, and then new sets kind of overshadowed it going forward, and it never really recovered until recently. So if you're investing, be careful with like sets like Surging Sparks, because I think the later part of Scarlet and Violet is prone to a massive reprint because Pokemon knows people want it and they're going crazy. They're fighting that target. They're fighting that GameStop. Please don't do that, guys. But so Pokemon knows they already made an announcement they're going to reprint. It's not going to come soon, probably later this year or early next year. But I can almost guarantee that Surgeon Sparks, Prismatic, even Journey Together, maybe even Destined Rivals and the Black and White set are going to get printed pretty heavily. So I think the earlier part of Scarlet and Violet is more safe, but you just never know. Pokemon can do whatever it wants, and it has a track record for doing random reprints sometimes. But I think the later part of Scarlet and Violet has the potential for massive reprints, but we'll see. Just want to kind of illustrate how at the time everyone thought this was the it set, and now it's kind of an afterthought, if we're being honest. So let me go ahead and jump to the second year of Sword and Shield. And this is going to be a fun one because this is when we actually hit a little bit of a lull, not going to lie. So the first set I want to highlight, actually, you know what? Let me just type it in. It's battle styles. Let's go in order. So I actually just recently opened one up in, I want to say it was in February. Yeah. Me and a couple of the homies, we got together on a random Wednesday night, I believe, or Thursday night. And we split it three ways, a booster box. We didn't pull any alternate arts, but I pulled the full art Tyranitar, which is pretty cool. But yeah, anyways, guys, this was right after Shining Fates. And I think this was kind of like Journey Together, guys. Very similar in terms of market sentiment. Uh, Obviously, now we recognize that Battle Styles has pretty cool artwork. We have the Sleepy Tyranitar, we have the Empoleon, we have the Urshifus, but it didn't really like build off of the hype. I remember Vivid and Shining Fates was just out of this world. But yeah, Battle Styles kind of like was a bummer set at the time. And it sold, at release for MSRP, which was pretty expensive at the time, but then it got crushed. So this is around the time too when distributors were having trouble getting products still from Pokemon, and a lot of game store owners and just online shops were over ordering because they were not getting their full allocations, right? But this is around the time where a lot of stores got burned because they made big orders, and while they didn't get it in the first wave, Pokemon started doing releasing in waves, and all these store owners and online shops were getting hammered with all these orders that they actually got fulfilled, and this really drove the price down. Battle Styles, and I'm gonna talk about Chilling Rain a little bit later, dropped to like $80 a box. Nobody wanted this, which was hard to comprehend because now we see it's like nearly $200. and nobody wanted these guys. It was hard, and then the ETBs were even worse. There were several YouTube card shop owners that were talking about how they couldn't get rid of it even at $40. They had to like fire sale it, and they lost a lot of money. Battle Styles lost a lot of people money once it came out, but it's rebounded nicely. It was a set that reintroduced alternate arts because alternate arts were honestly they've been around longer than we think. It just depends on what you consider an alternate art. Sun and Moon started to have a lot of alternate arts during the last part of it, like the team up set, tag team sets. But we went away from it for at least a year, Sword and Shield. But Battle Styles really brought it back with the Sleepy T-Tar, the Empoleon, and all that good stuff. So yeah, let's get into the next set, Chilling Reign. So Chilling Reign and Battle Styles were the sets that we were finally able to catch at Target and Walmart, all those places. And Chilling Reign, as you can see, it's a $400 box. Pretty crazy considering that it was kind of not embraced early on too by collectors. A lot of people thought it was mid. We had the Galarian birds. People were still, they liked it for the most part, but they were kind of on the fence. They weren't like super gung ho about it. Let's just say that. The Moltres was always pretty sought after, and then the Blaziken. My personal opinion, I'm not the biggest fan of that Blaziken card. I don't think it's worth that much to me. I probably will never have it because I wouldn't go after it. I don't think that card is worth what it is right now. My personal opinion. Come at me in the comments. Let me know. Let me know I'm wrong. But anyways, that card was always expensive. It was always like 150 out the gate, and it's never gotten lower than that if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this box got down to $80, guys. I remember that. I remember seeing big eBay sellers like P Football P had it for like 79.99 for a while. Some PokeTubers were talking about they were just taking the plunge and the risk of just buying cases of this, and if they held on, they are printing, guys. They are printing. Yeah, so this set was not liked early on, like I said, but now it's beloved. It has the most alternate arts of the era, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a pretty great set overall. So now let's get into the crazy set, man. Evolving Skies, guys. This set will forever be like it's going to be talked about for years and years, guys. Even if Pokemon dies in the future, other collectibles, stay strong or whatever, they go past Pokemon, they will talk about this set. And the reason why, because during that time, Modern wasn't still accepted as like investable. It wasn't accepted as like, oh, like it's not worth it. It shouldn't be this valuable this soon. Evolving Skies just, said, I don't care. Watch me move. And we're looking at a $1,600 box, guys. And I have a very sad story for myself. I let this one go. So it came out late 2021. I remember going into, several card shops back where I was living. Uh, I was able to get pre-release kits. Didn't pull anything. I remember I opened like four of them. I didn't get anything, guys. There's just straight green code cards, like horrible pull rates, right? And booster boxes were kind of, out the gate. They were not like crazy, but they were mid 100s, near MSRP, if not a little bit more. And once we got into like December of 2021, it started to cool down a little bit, and then we got like a massive reprint. So Evolving Skies dropped to 110. I was able to get a box on OfferUp. I bought two boxes uh, for basically he had it for 105 each. I bought two for 200, and I kept one sealed. I opened one of them. I got the golden Teleon, and mind you, I had one sealed, and I opened a couple more booster boxes like later that month, and didn't pull anything. Shout out to the homie Gmo. He did let me open a box in 2022 for him on my Instagram, and we pulled a Rainbow Rayquaza, but no alternate arts. It was pretty sad. But shout out to you, Gmo, if you're watching. Anyways, yeah. So I want to say in March or April, I sold my Evolving Skies box for $160. And at the time, I was like, it's super popular. Pokemon's gonna reprint it because at that time we were getting, reprints. Like not that, it didn't take that long for a reprint. And so we got one in July. And I'm not gonna lie, I was in a little bit of a tough spot in mid 2022. Another story for another day. So I really wasn't in the space to, buy a lot of stuff. And man, I really regret not getting at least one to keep sealed because I remember it brought the price down from like 200 to about 140, 145. And I looked at it, I kept an eye on it for a couple of days, and I just noticed it kept going up and up. And I was like, I don't know, man, it's kind of a lot for a booster box. And look at me now. I am sitting in front of a camera, booster box list, if that's a word. No booster boxes all in skies. And I missed out on a historic run and a historic set. Um, pretty sad, man. Get off the violence for me, please. I'm coping. But yeah, guys, this set, I'm not gonna really be hard on myself because in the moment you really don't know. But I guess in hindsight, I mean, come on. Umbreon, we have the Moonbreon, right? The crazy chase card. I'll have to do a video on just chase cards in general. Market sentiment about that. We got the Rayquaza, we got two of them, right? We got all the other evolutions. We even got Dragonite. It's a shame we didn't get Gyarados because oh my god, because Gyarados is in the set, but we still haven't got an illustration rare or anything of Gyarados. I hope we do in the next block, maybe a Mega Gyarados that we stick. But anyways, guys, so that's Evolving Skies. That's a little bit about market sentiment now. It's the like modern stunk mascot, basically. Let's talk about Fusion Strike before we get into the last block of Sword and Shield. So Fusion Strike, man, I remember these were also 80 bucks. Well, I don't think market price was ever $80. I think at low points was in the high 80s, maybe low 90s, but at a particular spot at Frankenstein's specific vendor, he always has the best prices. Once the market goes down, I'm gonna go back to him and pick up some cheaper boxes. We'll see. But anyways, this box was so cheap for a long time. This came on the heels of Evolving Skies. It also was on the heels of Celebrations, which we won't talk about too much because it's a special set. But this box was victimized by, just the timing of when it was released. And then, right after that was Brilliant Stars. And so everyone was hyped about that. And Future Strike never got its day. And I always pounded the table. If you were on my Instagram lives, I always talked about Future Strike, you know. Um, I opened a few booster boxes, never kept any sealed, and I regret it because it is like going to the moon itself. But so many great cards in there, and yeah, so it's just crazy how fickle market sentiment can be because this used to be 90 bucks, now it's almost 700. Most recent sale is 75, so this will probably get updated soon. Just absolutely bananas, guys. Let's get into the last block. I'm gonna speed this up. Brilliant. Oops, I can't spell. Stars. So Brilliant Stars booster box. Yeah. So this is when we kind of we started to lose this little steam. This box released like at 130, 120, and it never really got below that. And I remember it wasn't heavily printed right off the gate. There was concerns about it being, not printed to capacity. Right now, it's a $400 box. I was close to pulling the trigger a few weeks ago at 300. I regret not doing that. Yeah, this set I feel like is still underrated. I think it's like the second or third best set in the era. It's got the Charizards, it has Arceus, and it has the trainer gallery of the evolutions. I'm surprised those haven't been, popping off. They're a little easier to pull because they're in the trainer gallery subset. But this box, I honestly think this box is still underpriced. Um, yeah, because I think it is a better set than Fusion Strike. But Fusion Strike has the hype and momentum because of the Gengar and the Espeon. But I would probably look at Brilliant Star. I still think it's still a good buy, in my opinion. Let's go to Astral. So Astral Radiance was kind of like the least liked set in this part of the Sword and Shield, but it has really good cards. It has the Garchomp and the Starmie in the trainer gallery. It's got the Palkia and Dialga origin forms, but and then the Machamp. Machamp is pretty cool. I'm surprised that Machamp got so much love, which I'm a fighting type fan. Super happy it got its time in the sun. So this is a really cool set. But it wasn't really well received. So it's a $330 box. Not bad. And I think this set was printed less than any of the last block of Sword and Shield. So this might be still a good price to pick it up. And I know you're probably thinking like, Mike, where were if you were in the hobby, where were you like when it was like MSRP? Well, I wasn't, in. I was more just collecting cards. Not a huge fan of collecting sealed because it takes up a lot of space. But this is why this video is lessons learned. So I think this set, because I remember when XY sets were still sub $300, sub $400. At the time, I was thinking about buying a Fates Collide box for like 250. I passed on it, and now I think it's double or close to 1,000, if I'm not mistaken. So even though a box can be expensive, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have room to grow. So like I think this can continue. Even if the hype dies down, I don't think it'll fall that much because these boxes aren't in print anymore. So they're, what's out there is out there. I highly doubt that Pokemon would go back to reprint, although we did see it with other products related to evolutions, but I don't think they ever reprinted booster boxes at that point. Anyways, let's get into Lost Origin. Lost Origin was always popular. It did get a reprint and it dropped down to 105, I remember, or 110. Open one up, never pulled any alternate arts. It has the Giratina, of course, the Aerodactyl, and it's a $500 box. I honestly think it's not a bad buy. Definitely has room to grow. The reason why I say it has room to grow because I think this set is also better than Fusion Strike. Even though I'm a Fusion Strike fan, the last block of Sword and Shield is better than Fusion Strike. With the exception of Silver Tempest. We'll get into Silver Tempest next. I gotta wrap this video up soon because I have to get going. But yeah, Silver Tempest. This was released in late 2022, and this was $110 for the longest time. So it's 325, probably still a good buy. Obviously, the Lugia is there. I like Unknown. I like Regidrago, but not a lot of people do. Has some cool trainer galleries with the Rayquaza and all that. But I really think, guys, that this is a good set to buy as well. The last part of Sword and Shield, I think it's like last call. Get it before it takes off like Fusion Strike. And yeah, I should have kept one of these sealed. I opened a couple boxes. Again, didn't pull anything. Just opening packs, man, it was brutal. So how am I going to relate this to this upcoming era? So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing there. So lessons learned, guys. Sealed is your best bet for investments and booster boxes in particular. You can still make some good gains with ETBs, but I think in the long run, booster boxes are the way to go. How I would approach it, because right now I'm not really dabbling into the latter part of Scarlet and Violet. If I was going to park some money into some sets, I would look at the early part of Scarlet and Violet. I really do believe Surging Sparks, Prismatic, Journey Together, Dust and Rivals, and then the Black and White set. I think over the course of this year and next year are going to be readily available. I think we are going to see some like pretty crazy price drops for those sets. Maybe it's a hot take. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Pokemon can just stay high forever, but the odds of that are not good. Because I've been there, guys. I've been in situations where, it was unimaginable for like certain sets to go down in price. But, Pokemon has the power to reprint these. They've already acknowledged that they are going to reprint because they're in demand. I would stay away right now, investment wise, later part of Scarlet and Violet. If you want to do a quick flip, I would look at the earlier sets and for holding long term, obviously. But anyways, guys, hopefully you guys like the trip down memory lane. Hopefully you can kind of apply some the stuff that I learned and what I observed and apply it to future sets. Me personally, I'm gonna start to get back into holding sealed boxes once we get into the mega sets. And Now I know when Pokemon has a downturn. Now I know to start scooping stuff up at its low point. I wish I would have learned that sooner because I'd be sitting here with all kinds of boxes and just trading in stuff for higher end cards that I want. So I'm more of a card collector, but it would be pretty cool to have a booster box collection too. But gotta find the space for it. I really don't like it taking space, but um, that's with me. Anyways, guys, hope you guys liked the video. Like and subscribe if you like this content, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.